Hey there, Bible nerds. Welcome back to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye, where we dive into the Bible chapter by chapter. Today, we're diving headfirst into Revelation chapters 11 through 15, and trust me, it's a wild ride. Buckle up for an episode packed with fire breathing prophets, a cosmic pregnant woman facing off with a dragon, not one but two bizarre beasts, an angelic announcement, or actually announcements, plural, and even a heavenly singing session. If that sounds like a lot, well, it actually is. But fear not, your faithful host is here to guide you through the drama with clarity, a dash of humor. I tried to be humorous, yes, and maybe even a few dad jokes moments along the way. So grab your drink, get comfy, and let's dive in. Chapter 11. The Two Witnesses and the Seventh Trumpet. Our story resumes with John receiving a strange task. He is handed a heavenly measuring rod and told to measure God's temple and altar in Jerusalem, but not the outer courtyard given over to the nations. It's as if God's saying, mark off what's mine, but know that outsiders are trampling the holy city for a time. And that time is specified as 42 months or 3.5 years, recurring prophetic period. Now comes the entrance of the two witnesses, one of the Revelation's most mysterious and measurable duos. God appoints these two prophetic figures who will preach and prophesy for 1,260 days, which, by the way, is also 3.5 years, while wearing sackcloth, the fashion choice of biblical mourners and repenters. These two are described as the two olive trees and two lampstands standing before the Lord. A reference that harkens back to the prophetic visions of Zechariah. Um, and talk about power. Anyone who tries to harm these witnesses gets a nasty surprise. Fire belches from the witness's mouth to consume their foes. And yes, you heard that right. Literal fire breathing preachers. Scary. If that isn't hardcore enough, they also can shut the sky to stop the rain and turn water into blood, striking the earth with plagues at will. And I bet that sounds familiar to y'all if you've been listening or if you know the Bible in general. These acts mirror the Old Testament miracles of Elijah and Moses. Moses would turn the Nile to blood and summon plagues. I actually haven't covered Elijah's yet. But yeah, anyway, so it's like the story is saying, think of the boldest prophets you know. These two are in that same league. So for a while, these or the two witnesses preach and nobody can touch them. Talk about an ironclad divine security detail. But when they finish their testimony, a new villain enters stage right, the beast from the bottomless pit. This beast rises up, makes war on them and kills them. Suddenly, our invincible prophets are lying dead in the street, and not just any street, their bodies are in the city, prophetically called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. That clue points to Jerusalem, which is being compared to wicked cities of old. The once holy city has become so corrupt that it's nicknamed after history's nastiest neighborhoods. What follows is morbid and grimly ironic. People from all over the world gaze at the corpses of the two witnesses, refusing to bury them. For 3.5 days, there's that 3.5 thing going on again. The wicked celebrate like it's a global anti-prophet holiday, sending gifts to each other and rejoicing that these troublemakers or troublemaking prophets are finally dead. It's as if the world threw a party called Happy Dead Prophets Day. The text in the Bible even says the earth's inhabitants gloated over them and celebrated and exchanged presents because these two prophets all had tormented those on earth. You can practically hear the late night comedians of the day making jokes at the witness's expense. But you guessed it, the party is short lived. In a stunning reversal, after those 3.5 days, God breathes life into the dead prophets. They suddenly stand up on their feet, very much alive, and the whole world that was watching is struck with terror. A loud voice from heaven then calls out, "Come up here," and the two witnesses ascend to heaven in a cloud while their stunned enemies watch. It's a mic drop moment courtesy of God, as if what wasn't enough at the same hour, that same hour, a great earthquake shakes the earth, collapsing a tenth of it. So 7,000 people die in the quake, and the survivors are scared, witless, and finally give glory to the God of heaven. Funny how a little divine wake up call can change hearts. Without drama, chapter 11 grand finale is still not over. The second woe, which is disaster, has passed, and the third is coming. That third woe arrives in the form of the seventh trumpet. Remember the series of trumpets from the previous episodes? We had paused after six. Now the seventh angel blows his trumpet, and instead of more destruction, John hears loud voices in heaven proclaiming a victory anthem. Um, the King of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Messiah, and he will reign forever and ever. So, in response, the 24 elders around God's throne fall on their faces and worship God, singing praises that at last the time has come for God's reign to fully manifest, to judge the wicked and reward his servants. It's a jubilant heavenly worship scene, essentially declaring God's kingdom wins. John then sees God's temple in heaven opened, and inside the Holy of Holies appears the Ark of Covenant, the ancient symbol of God's promise and presence. Lightning flashes, thunder crashes, the earth shakes, and heavy hail falls. It's as if creation itself is applauding at the news. This chapter ends on this triumphant cinematic note. Evil had seemingly won by killing God's witnesses, but God got the last word, and now heaven announces that the Lord and his Messiah are taking over the world's kingdom. So, this chapter gives us a powerful lesson in divine timing and hope. The two witnesses reminds us that speaking truth to a hostile world can be dangerous, yet God protects and empowers his messengers until their mission is complete. There were moments it looked like evil triumphed. The witnesses were killed and even ridiculed, but God was in control. He's always in control, just remember that. In our lives, we might face setbacks or feel defeated for a season. This chapter encourages us to stay faithful and fearless. God can vindicate his people even after what looks like total failure. And the sounding of the seventh trumpet assures us that no matter how chaotic things get, ultimately the kingdom of the world will become God's kingdom and he shall reign forever. So take heart when we face opposition or see injustice thriving. Revelations chapter 11 nudges us to remember that God's victory is certain. Our job is to be faithful witnesses in the meantime. All right, fun fact corner. Who are those two witnesses? So, this has been a burning question for readers over centuries, and several theories have been proposed. A very popular view is that they're literally Elijah and Moses back for an end times encore. After all, the witnesses' miracles, stopping rain, turning water to blood, match Elijah and Moses' greatest hits, and those who even showed up together at Jesus. Another long-standing idea is that the two witnesses are Enoch and Elijah, the two Old Testament figures who never saw death. And were taken up to heaven. The thought here is that since it is appointed to everyone to die once, Enoch and Elijah must return to die as the witnesses. Others have symbolically interpreted the pair as representing groups like the Jewish or Gentile believers or the law and the prophets, etc. Um, the honest answer, we can't be 100% sure, this side of heaven. We'll know when it actually happens, if it happens in our time. What matters is what they do, bearing bold testimony rather than their exact identity. But it's definitely fun to wonder if Moses might tag team with Elijah for the final showdown. Imagine the plagues and firestorms that duo could call down. All right, and that is it for chapter 11. All right, chapter 12, The Woman, the Dragon, and War in Heaven. So in chapter 11 was if chapter 11 was a superhero story of sorts, chapter 12 is like a sweeping celestial drama, part epic fairy tale, part spiritual warfare saga. John witnesses a great sign in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She is pregnant and carrying out in birth pangs. This vivid, shining woman represents God's faithful people. You can think of her as embodying Israel of old, since she's about to give birth to the Messiah, and also the people of God as a whole. For now, picture this radiant, expectant mother in the sky. So, enter the villain. John sees another sign, a great red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns on its head. This dragon is the ultimate bad guy of Revelation, later plainly identified as Satan or the devil. He is huge, fiery, and his tail sweeps a third of the stars from the sky, flinging them to earth. A dramatic way of saying he dragged down a portion of heavenly beings with him. The dragon positions himself before the woman, jaws open, ready to devour her child the moment it's born. Talk about terrifying prenatal care. The tension peaks. The woman gives birth to a male child described as the one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. This phrase is a direct throwback to the Messianic prophecy in Psalm chapter 2, leaving no doubt this child represents Jesus, the Messiah. The moment he is born, the child is snatched up to God and his throne, safe from the dragon's jaws. The woman, meanwhile, flees into the wilderness to a place prepared by God where she's cared for 1,260 days. There's that 3.5 years thing going on again. So just take note of that. The imagery should suggest that after Christ's ascension, God protects his people even in tough times, nourishing them spiritually in the wilderness. Now the scene shifts to heavenly warfare. John describes a cosmic battle, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon and his angels. Michael, often understood as the archangel and protector of God's people, leads the charge. In an epic showdown, the dragon and his demonic forces are defeated and thrown out of heaven. A loud voice in heaven then shouts a victory proclamation. Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah, for the accuser of our comrades has been thrown down. So the accuser referring to Satan, who accused God's people day and night. The heavenly voice continues rejoicing that believers overcame the dragon by blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. So they held firm even to death. There's celebration in heaven over Satan's eviction, and this is a big but, the voice also delivers a warning. Rejoice then, you heavens and those who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. In other words, Satan is enraged and desperate, like a cornered beast, because he knows the clock is ticking on his evil rampage. So, indeed, this chapter shows us an infuriated dragon now confined to earth, unable to vent his anger and, anger at God in heaven. The devil turns his fury toward the woman, the mother figure who gave birth to the Messiah. The narrative shifts back to earth. The dragon chases the woman, but she's given two wings of a great eagle to fly off to a safe place in the wilderness where she's taken care of for a times and a half a time. That phrase means 1 year plus 2 years plus half a year, so 3.5 years yet again. Frustrated, the dragon tries one more trick. He spews a torrent of water from his mouth like a raging river to sweep the woman away. It's like a flood of persecution intended to drown God's people. However, the earth itself comes to the rescue. The ground opens up and swallows the river, thwarting the dragon's plan. So, go Mother Earth or Mother Nature, or rather, go God's providence through nature. So, foiled and fuming, the dragon has had enough of chasing the woman. In the final verse of chapter 12, we see him pivot to make war on the rest of her child, defined as those who keep God's commandments and hold the testimony of Jesus. In plain terms, the dragon sets his sights on persecuting believers. The chapter leaves us with dragon standing on the seashore, ominously, as if plotting his next move. Here's a cliffhanger alert, even though I'm just gonna go right next to the next chapter after this. But a change of scene and new character are about to emerge from the sea and the land. If this were a TV show, we'd cut to credits right there. So chapter 12 pulls back the cosmic curtain and shows us the spiritual drama between the Christian story and the church story. On one level, we see the nativity in supernatural terms. Jesus was born and Satan tried desperately to destroy him. Think of King Herod, or his attempt to kill baby Jesus, for example. Yet God protected Christ and ultimately defeated Satan through the cross and resurrection. On another level, the woman's struggle and safety remind us how God protects his people. We may feel like we're in a wilderness at times, but God provides us, for us, even there. The dragon's rage against the woman's other child warns that Christian will face the devil's wrath on earth. Spiritual warfare and persecution are real. However, the big encouragement is this: Satan is defeated in principle. He is thrown down. His time is short, and he can't accuse us before God anymore. Believers overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, meaning our victory comes from Jesus. Sacrifice and our faithful witnesses, faithful witness. In practical terms, we fight not with physical weapons, but with faith, perseverance, and truth. So if you're feeling attacked or weary, remember Revelation chapter 12's message: you're on the winning side of the cosmic battle. Stand firm and keep the faith. The dragon is thrashing because he knows he's ultimately lost. Okay, fun fact corner. The mysterious woman, is she Mary, or is she the representation of Israel, or both? So the glowing woman of Revelation 12 has intrigued interpreters for ages as well. So in Catholic tradition, many see her as a symbol of the Virgin Mary. After all, Mary gave birth to Jesus. So, and the imagery of a woman with crown of 12 stars fit Mary's role as queen of the saints in heaven. Popes and church art have often connected Mary with this celestial woman, depicting her standing on a moon with stars around her head. However, this is not the only interpretation. Many Protestant scholars and other Christian thinkers view the woman more collectively as God's people. So, a representation of God's people. Essentially a figure that at first represents Israel, the faithful community that produced the Messiah, and then the church that follows Christ. The 12 stars on her crown can signify the 12 tribes of Israel, for instance. In fact, Revelation Revelation's imagery here echoes Joseph's dream in Genesis chapter 37, where the sun, moon, and 12 stars represent Jacob, or Israel, his wife, and the 12 tribes. So the woman seems to embody the whole story of the people of God. And I'm also leaning more into that just based on my, own understanding. But who knows? But Israel bringing forth Jesus, and then the church facing persecution. The short answer, she is a multi-layered symbol. Um, Here's a bonus trivia. In art and culture, this woman inspired a lot of iconography. For example, image of Mary with a crown of stars, and even the European Union flag's circle of stars has a legendary connection to Mary's iconography. All right. Was I talking too fast? I think I was talking too fast. Anyways, that's it for chapter 12. All right, chapter 13, The Beast and the Mark of 666. Oh my gosh. I mean, goosebumps just saying that. Okay, so if you thought one dragon was enough trouble, chapter 13 brings on two beastly sidekicks for the dragon. This chapter is like a dystopian monster movie meets political thriller. It introduces us to the infamous Antichrist figures of Revelation. And, these bad guys have captured imaginations ever since. John sees the dragon on the seashore, and then rising out of the sea comes a beast. This beast from the sea is a terrifying chimera. It has 7 heads and 10 horns with 10 crowns on its horns. A blasphemous names, and it has blasphemous names on its heads. Its body is like a leopard, and its feet like a bear's, its mouth like a lion's. So if you're picturing a sort of mega Godzilla made of zoos worth predators, you're on the right track. You can also use, if you have ChatGPT or any AI, generate whatever AI thing, you can generate the picture over there, and it will kind of help you see what this beast look like based on all the description that was given in Revelation. Anyway, so these features actually hark back to the 4 beasts of Daniel chapter 7, which represented ancient empires. Meaning this composite beast represents a powerful empire of ruler embodying all the worst of those kingdoms. The dragon, which is Satan, gives this beast his power, throne, and authority, effectively making it his champion on earth. One of the beast's heads seemed to have a fatal wound that had been healed, and this miraculous recovery amazes the whole world. People start worshipping the beast, marveling who is like the beast and who can fight against it. So the beast is basically a tyrant rock star given a global platform to blaspheme God, wage war on the saints, and dominate every tribe and nation for 42 months. So there's those 3.5 years again. It keeps coming back. So again, take note of that. Let's unpack this a bit. Many see this sea beast as representing a specific anti-god, empire, or leader. In John's immediate context, it likely symbolized the Roman Empire and its emperors. In fact, there's strong scholarly consensus that the beast is closely linked to Emperor Nero and the Roman state. Nero had persecuted Christians brutally, and a rumor persisted that he'd returned from death. That quote-unquote healed head wound could be an allusion to Nero or the revival of oppressive imperial power. The people's cry of who can fight the beast echoes the awe people had toward Rome's might. So in a way, John's vision is demystifying the Roman propaganda, that mighty beast is powered by the devil and set against God. John hears the beast is allowed to conquer the saints physically, but importantly, he cannot destroy their faith. A voice says, "If anyone has an ear, listen. If you're to be taken captive, to captivity you go. If killed by the sword, you must be killed." Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. In short, it's going to be a rough ride. Some believers will be martyred and imprisoned by this evil regime, but hold on and endure um, faithfully. So there's more, a lot more. Beast number one gets a partner in crime. Next, John sees a second beast. This one coming up actually from the earth. This beast from the earth has a milder look. It has two horns like a lamb, but don't be fooled, it speaks like a dragon. Imagine that. We often call this one the false prophet because later Revelation identifies it as such. And its job is basically propaganda minister for the first beast. This earth beast exercises the authority of the first beast and uses religious deception to get the world to worship the first beast. It performs flashy signs, even calling down fire from heaven in front of earth or in front of people. Though these miracles, through these miracles, it deceives the inhabitants of earth. It tells them to set up an image of the beast, and then somehow it animates this image, giving it a breath so that the statue can speak. Imagine a talking giant idol, ancient world animatronics, courtesy of the devil. This image of the beast then demands worship, and those who refuse to worship it are killed. I feel like we're getting close to that with what's happening, and especially in the US right now, but you know what? I digress. It's a grim scenario of forced idolatry. Think of King Nebuchadnezzar, his golden statue in Daniel 3, but on steroids. Actually, if I remember correctly, because I just did a Bible study on this a few months ago, that the golden statue was like, if I'm not mistaken, I can't quite remember, but I believe it was like 8 feet tall, or 8 stories. 8 stories tall. So imagine something that is even, bigger than that. Again, it says something like that, but on steroids. So, as if that weren't enough, the second beast implements a system of total economic and social control. The mark of the beast, the mark of the beast. It compels all people, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or forehead. Without this mark, no one can buy or sell anything. I believe somewhere in Europe they're already doing this. They have a chip that you can use, kind of like the chip that you have on your credit card, but it's on your arm or something. So you can just, scan that using the chip in your arm or something. But anyway, so that's scary. Never, never agree to put a chip or mark in your body. Okay. Anyways, so the mark, we are told, is the beast's name or the number of its name. And John famously clues us in. This calls for wisdom. Let anyone with understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a person. Its number is 666. So, yeah, 666. Easily the most notorious number in the Bible. We'll dig into it more in our fun fact corner, if you can even call it fun fact corner. But in this story, it serves as the beast's brand, a sign of loyalty or coercion. To not have the mark means you're an outlaw to the beast's empire, likely starving or hiding on fringes. This was a scary prospect for John's original readers, many of whom faced pressure to participate in the Roman imperial cult, like declaring Caesar is the Lord and such. And again, this has a lot of like parallels in what's currently happening, but I don't want to talk about it. The vision is basically saying a time of intense persecution will demand steadfast faith. Don't take the mark, even if it means hardship. It's the devil's system, opposing God's seal on his people. Remember, the 144,000 were sealed on their foreheads with God's name um, uh, in the next chapter. And so, um, this chapter presents a kind of unholy trinity: the dragon, which is a Satan, acting as an anti-father; the sea beast as an antichrist or a false messiah figure demanding worship; and the earth beast as an anti-spirit performing deceptive signs and directing worship to the false messiah. It's a dark parody of God's kingdom, but ominous as it is, forewarned is forearmed. Readers are meant to recognize these beasts for what they are and resist their blasphemous sway. By the chapter's end, the stage is set. The dragon and his beasts have the world in thrall, and true believers are under fire. We are left hanging, yearning for deliverance, which, spoiler for next chapter, will start to address. So this is sobering. This is a sobering portrayal of evil's dominance in the last days. Yet, it's full of insights for any age. The two beasts represent the way satanic power manifests in the world through oppressive political force, which is the sea beast, and deceitful religious cultural propaganda, the earth beast. um, yeah. Anyways, I don't want to talk about politics. Anyways, believers are warned that the devil doesn't always come with horns and pitchfork. Sometimes he comes as a smooth talking deceiver or a tyrant, promising peace and safety in exchange for worshipful loyalty. Using the Bible as a weapon. Ugh. Like, again, I don't want to talk about it. It's like this is like too close right now. But anyway, so the mark of the beast challenges us what compromises are we tempted to make to buy and sell in society, which the number 666 is a specific symbol, likely pointing to an emperor like Nero. It generally reminds us how worldly systems often pressure people to conform in ways that deny God. The call for endurance and faith rings out clearly. God's people must be willing to be countercultural, even if persecuted or economically boycotted. On a heart level, this chapter invites us to examine, do we bear God's mark, or our minds and actions, forehead and hand, marked by Christ's lordship, or do we let the world's beastly values imprint on us? It's a tough call, but a timeless one. And remember, even when it seems the beasts are unbeatable, Revelation as a whole assures us that their reign is brief. Chapter 13's night will give way to God's dawn. All right, fun fact corner. Decoding the number 666. What's in the number? So, without a doubt, 666 is the most infamous number from Revelation. Over the years, it's been linked to everything from barcodes to microchip to credit card companies in the people's imagination, whatever. But what did John likely mean? So in ancient times, letters had numeric values, a system called gematria. So John hints that the beast number corresponds to a person's name. Early Christians noticed that the Greek spelling Nero Caesar can be transliterated into Hebrew as okay, I'm just gonna say the letters Nronqsr. And guess what? Those letters add up to 666. So there is broad scholarly agreement that this number was a coded reference to Emperor Nero, symbolizing the wicked persecuting power of Rome. It's like John was saying, hint, 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 the beast equals Nero, and by extension, a Nero like leader in our current day. Interestingly, some ancient manuscripts of Revelation have the number 616 instead of 666. Um, why? So if you spell Nero Caesar a slightly different way, it comes out to 616. This suggests that early readers who spoke Latin adjusted the spelling to still point to Nero. So this number isn't a random spooky number. Like 666 is not a random spooky number. It's hang on, let me look it up. So I'm back. So it's freighted with historical and symbolic meaning. It represents humanity in opposition to God, falling short of the divine perfection often symbolized by seven. And specifically for John, the oppressive regime of his day. And in case you're wondering, no, 666 on your license plate or phone number is not a curse, though it might turn a few heads at church. Every time I see that number, I'm just like, I panic. Like the other day, on my step count on my watch, just so happened when I look at my watch to look at my step count, it was at, well, it was like 6666. It was four sixes. So I started walking fast so I can add more into my step count right away. It really freaked me out. But anyway, so that is it for chapter 13. All right. What is it? Okay, now on to chapter 14, the Lamb on Mount Zion and the Harvest. Um, okay, we are about halfway. More than halfway. So after the darkness of the beast, chapter 14 bursts onto the scene like a breath of fresh heavenly air. We go from the beast's ugly mark to a vision of the Lamb and the beautifully marked faithful. John looks, and behold, the Lamb, who is Jesus, is standing on Mount Zion, and with him are 144,000 people who have his name and his father's name written on their foreheads, in contrast to the beast mark. These 144,000 were mentioned back in chapter 7. Um, wait. Yeah, chapter 7. I thought I said episode 7. We don't have 7 episodes yet. So yeah, chapter 7, as servants of God sealed for protection, and here they appear again, symbolizing the entirety of God's redeemed who have kept themselves faithful. They are described as spiritually pure. Yeah, so they follow the lamb wherever he goes, and they are the first fruits to God, indicating they represent pure offering of humanity to God. In their mouth, no lie is found. They are blameless. In short, these are the ultimate faithful followers of Jesus, and what a joyful scene. John hears a sound from heaven like a waterfall and thunder, and it turns out to be the sound of a harpist and a choir. 144,000 are singing a new song before God's throne and the living creature and elders. It's an exclusive song. Only these redeemed can learn it. Imagine a massive heavenly music festival, lamb stock, if you will, where only the truly devoted have backstage passes to sing along. So after this inspiring glimpse of the faithful with Jesus, John sees a rapid fire sequence of three flying angels, each with an important message for the earth. So Angel 1 zooms overhead carrying the eternal gospel to proclaim to everyone on earth. He shouts, "Fear God and give him glory because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made heaven and earth and sea and the springs of water." Basically a final call to reverence the true creator in contrast to worshiping the beast. It's like God's last evangelical altar call from the sky. Worship God, not the imposters. Angel 2 follows, announcing, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, who made all nations drink the wine of her impure passion." This is a prophetic taunt that Babylon has fallen. Babylon being John's code name for the corrupt worldly empire opposed to God. So, anyway, so even though chapter 17 through 18 will detail Babylon's judgment, this angel gives an advance spoiler. The wicked city that intoxicated the world with sin is doomed. This would have been hugely encouraging to Christians suffering under Rome's power, like hearing the tyrant's days are numbered. Angel 3 comes with a dire warning. Anyone who worships the beast and its image and receive its mark will drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength. So this angel basically says if you go along with beast worship, you will face God's judgment, described as eternal torment with no rest, the smoke of their torment rising forever. It's one of the most sobering warning in scripture. No sugarcoating. God's holiness cannot shrug off allegiance to devil. The angel concludes, and John adds that this situation calls for the endurance of the saints who keep God's commands and faith in Jesus. In other words, hold on through the beast's threads. Better to suffer briefly now than face the eternal wrath of God later. Right then, John hears a voice from heaven say, write this. Blessed are the dead who from now blessed are the dead who from now on die in the Lord. And the Spirit responds, yes, they will rest from their labors, for their deads follow them. So, what a tender beatitude. It's like God is encouraging those facing martyrdom. If you die belonging to Christ, you are blessed. Yet you get true rest, and your faithful works will accompany you as a legacy. In context, this especially comforted those who might be killed by beast-powered persecutors. Dying in the Lord isn't tragedy, it's entry into rest and reward. This is one of the Revelation's beautiful nuggets of hope. Finally, this chapter wraps up with two harvest visions that are poetic and terrifying. John sees a white cloud, and seated on the cloud is one like a son of man with a golden crown and a sharp sickle. This image clearly echoes Jesus, the Son of Man, coming to reap. An angel from the temple calls to the one on a cloud, use your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come. The harvest of the earth is fully ripe. So the one on the cloud swings his sickle and harvests the earth. This appears to symbolize Jesus gathering in his people, a positive harvest of the righteous, like grain being collected. It's swift and decisive. Then another angel, also with a sharp sickle, comes out, and yet another angel, in charge of fire and the altar, calls to the second one, put in your sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for its grapes are ripe. So this time the angel swings his sickle and gathers the grape harvest of the earth and tosses it into a great winepress of God's wrath. In John's vivid description, the winepress is trotted outside the city, and blood flows from the press, rising as high as horses' brittles for a distance of 1,600 stadia, which is about 180 miles. It's an image of horrifying, extensive judgment. The symbolism of winepress squashing grapes becomes the metaphor of God's wrath upon the wicked, their blood pouring out. It is very scary. It intentionally echoes prophetic imagery like Isaiah 6:3 and Joel 3. The detail of blood up to horses' brittles, bridles, for 1,600 stadia is not to be literal measurement so much as a graphic hyperbole to say God's judgment on the wicked will be total and immense. If you're thinking grapes of wrath, yes, that phrase comes right there. It famously inspired the Julia Wardhoe's line in the Battle of the Republic, which is, he is trampling out on the village where the grape of wrath are stoned, which in turn gave John Steinbeck's novel The Grape of Wrath its title. So just a little trivia right there. So this chapter essentially previews the outcome: believers gathered joyfully to Christ, and unbelievers crushed under judgment. Wow, imagine that imagery. I don't even want to think about it. So it's stark good news and bad news, but it assures the persecuted faithful that evil will not have the last say. Um, yeah. So Babylon will fall, beast worshippers will face justice, and those who stay true to Jesus will be gathered to glory and be called blessed forever. Okay, so fun fact corner. And you know what? Let's reflect first. So yeah. Wait, did we reflect already? Let me remember. so so this chapter is both comforting and challenging. On the comfort side, we see the Lamb standing victorious on Mount Zion with his redeemed. It's a picture of worship and security. No matter how chaotic the world gets, keep the mental image Jesus with his faithful ones, his name on their forehead, singing the song of triumph. That's where history is headed, the harmony and communion with God. We are also given the beautiful promise that dying in Christ is a blessing, is a blessed thing. A graduation to peace and rest with all of faithful efforts remembered by God. That's why I don't think I've ever talked about this, but I'm not really scared to, you know, to die. The only thing I think of is that I don't want to leave my daughter, but then again, I am doing my part now. I'm making sure that my daughter learns about God, and I want to make sure that she loves God, she fears God, and all of that. So I'm doing my part. She's only a preschooler, so there's only so much that she can understand at her age. But I'm doing my part. I'm introducing her to God, and make sure that she is on the right track, so that when I do die, I trust that, hopefully we will go in the same place to God, you know. So, but yeah, a lot of people are scared to die, actually. And yeah, I don't even know if this is something that people actually usually think of, but yeah, I know that a lot of people are scared to die, but I'm not. I'm not. I have faith. So, um but yeah, but only God knows, if only God knows, but I have faith, and I'm not scared to finally go home, if that makes sense. And I know that my daughter, I have faith that also my daughter will be there as well. We'll both be home eventually, with God. Um, anyways, I don't want to get emotional. So on the challenging side, the stark choice is laid bare. There's no middle ground between the lamb seal and the beast's mark, between worshiping God or Babylon, or whatever you're worshiping now. The angels' messages urge us to fear God, and resist the allure of Babylon, which could be any worldly system that seduces us away from God. We are reminded that God's judgment, though delayed, is certain, symbolized in the gruesome, very gruesome wine press. This isn't to scare us senseless, but to instill a holy seriousness about the life's ultimate direction. Every person is moving toward one of those two harvests. Which harvest do I want to be a part of? If the answer is with Jesus on Mount Zion, then Revelation 14 encourages me to live now with that end in view, keeping pure devotion as the 144,000 did, holding fast to truth and proclaiming the gospel like the first angel, so that others may join that joyful crowd and avoid the winepress. In short, this chapter gives a mini gospel in the heavens, salvation for the repentant, well, for the defiant, and calls us to enduring faith and urgent witness. All right, fun fact corner. Grapes of wrath. So from Revelation to the Republic, the dramatic phrase "grapes of wrath" in this chapter has echoed far beyond the Bible. American abolitionist and poet Julia Ward Ho borrowed it for her famous battle hymn of the Republic. in 1862, as I have mentioned earlier. If you want to look that up. In the opening verse, she wrote, he is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. So this lyric likens the American Civil War to God's righteous judgment on injustice, specifically slavery. The hymn became a popular Union anthem, giving a spiritual weight to the war effort. Later, novelist John Steinbeck used The Grapes of Wrath as the title of his 1939 masterpiece about Dust Bowl migrants at his wife's suggestion, actually. Steinbeck's novel doesn't depict divine judgment, rather, the title ironically points to the brewing anger over social injustices faced by common people. Still, the fact that both a patriotic song and a social protest novel drew on Revelation 14's imagery shows how powerful these metaphors are. They resonate with a deep sense of ultimate justice, that the suffering of the downtrodden will one day be avenged and evil will meet its squashing in the winepress of God. So, next time you hear the battle hymn or see Steinbeck's book, remember they owe a nod to Revelation's poetic punch. And that is it for chapter 14. Alright, chapter 15. Last one, 7 angels with 7 plagues. Prelude to the bowls. So we have now reached chapter 15, the last chapter of this episode, which is the narrative flow. Or in the narrative flow is a setup chapter, like the calm and worship before the final storm. So it's the shortest chapter in Revelation, but it's loaded with significance as it prepares us for the last series of judgments, the 7 bowls of God's wrath to be poured out in the next chapter. That will also be in the next episode. So John reports seeing another great and amazing sign in heaven, 7 angels holding the 7 last plagues. Because with these, the wrath of God is completed. So this is it. God's final wrath will be dispensed through the 7 angels. But before we zoom in on them, John's attention turns to something like a sea of glass mingled with fire. We've seen the sea of glass, clear as crystal, earlier before God's throne in chapter 4. Now it's mixed with fire, perhaps symbolizing judgment. And standing beside this fiery glassy sea are those who had conquered the beast and its image and the number of its name. In other words, here are the victors who refused the mark, who stayed true under persecution. Likely many are martyrs now in heaven. They're holding harps of God, and they begin to sing. What do they sing? The songs of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb. This is fascinating duet. It is a fascinating duet of songs. The Song of Moses refers back to the Old Testament, specifically the victory song Moses and the Israelites sang after God delivered them through the Red Sea. Remember when they started singing. If you haven't, you can. I don't remember specifically what episode that was, but I believe it was in Exodus 15. So that was the original "I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously" number, celebrating God overthrowing Pharaoh's army. By mentioning the Song of Moses and the Lamb, Revelation draws a parallel. As God saved his people from Pharaoh then, so the Lamb has saved his people from the beast now. Different eras, same God, same ultimate victory. The content of the song in chapter 15 goes like this. Imagine a multitude singing in unison with triumphant music, saying, "Great and amazing are your deeds, Lord God the Almighty. Just and true are your ways, King of the nations, Lord, who will not fear and glorify your name, for you alone are holy. All nations will come and worship before you, for your judgments have been revealed." So, in a short but powerful hymn, praising God's works, his justice, his holiness, and looking forward to a universal acknowledgement of God's sovereignty, it's like the anthem of the overcomers, exalting God for finally setting things right. With the victor's song concluded, John looks and sees the next part of the vision, the sanctuary of the tent um of witness in heaven. Essentially, the heavenly temple is open. Out of the sanctuary comes the seven angels with the seven plagues. They are dressed in pure bright linen with golden sashes, looking very priestly. One of the four living creatures hands each of the angels a golden bowl full of the wrath of God who lives forever and ever. Um, think of these bowls as shallow, wide dishes brimming with God's righteous anger ready to be poured out like libations to finish off the judgment of the earth. As this transfer happens, the temple is filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. And it says no one could enter the sanctuary until the seven plagues of the seven angels were finished. In the Old Testament, when God's glory filled the tabernacle or temple, not even Moses or the priest could enter. Here it signifies the overwhelming presence of God in the acts of judgment, his holiness in smoke form. It also might imply that the time for intercession is over. God's decision to judge is resolute and nothing can stop it until it's done. It has a dramatic pause. Heaven itself is like, stand back, the final wrath is about to be poured. So it's the divine do not disturb sign until the wrath is completed. And on that note, angels armed with golden bowls, temples smoking, about to unleash judgment. This chapter ends. It's the ominous cliffhanger leading into the grand finale of the seven bowls in the next chapter or the next episode. So, this chapter reminds us that judgment is actually something to praise God for, at least from the perspective of those who've been saved and oppressed. The victors sing about God's justice and holiness, rejoicing that his judgments have been revealed. In our day to day, we might feel squeamish about judgment, but Revelation portrays a universe where God's righteous resolution of evil is a cause of worship. It validates that our God is just. He doesn't let evil slide forever. Also, the reference to Moses' song encourages us as definitely as God's triumph at the Red Sea, so he will triumph over whatever Pharaoh or beast or whatever it is, you know, threaten us now. In personal terms, we can trust God for deliverance and sing his praises even before the victory is fully manifest because his track record is flawless. Additionally, seeing the martyrs and steadfast believers with harps on the glassy sea should strengthen our resolve. Um, these folks likely went through torture or death for their faith, yet here they are celebrating triumph. It assures us that um, whatever cost we pay for allegiance to Christ will be worth it a million times over. Finally, the image of the sanctuary filling the with God's glory, smoke reminds us his awesome holiness. There is a time when mercy gives way to judgment, a solemn reminder not to take God's patience for granted. But for those who belong to him, his glory is not destructive. It's awe inspiring and vindicating. We learn to hold these two truths in tension. God is Savior, God is Judge. Both make him praiseworthy. As we anticipate the climactic judgments, this chapter invites us to pause and join the chorus. Great and amazing are your deeds, Lord God the Almighty. Ooh, all right, fun fact corner. So the Song of Moses and the Lamb, um, so it's not every day you get a mashup of Old Testament and New Testament victory songs. Um, Revelation 15's Song of Moses and the Lamb intentionally links Exodus and Jesus. The original Song of Moses in Exodus 15 was essentially the first worship song of Israel as free people celebrating how God drowned the Egyptian forces in the Red Sea. By evoking it here, Revelation shows the continuity of God's saving acts. In fact, some of the phrases in the song, like just and true are your ways, or who will not fear, O Lord, echo Old Testament passages. This signifies that the final redemption through Jesus is the fulfillment of all God's deliverance foreshadowing in the Old Testament. Here's a fun trivia. In Jewish tradition, the Exodus song of Moses was regularly recited and was central to worship. For Christians, seeing it paired with the Song of the Lamb is a beautiful nod that the God of Moses is the God of the Lamb. He hasn't changed. He still defeats the enemy and liberates his people, now in an ultimate sense. Also, note the detail that the victors stand by a sea of glass mingled with fire. Just as Israel stood by the Red Sea watching Pharaoh's army destroyed, these saints stand by the heavenly Red Sea, singing praise for the new deliverance. Revelation is full of these poetic parallels. So the next time you sing a song of praise about victory in Jesus, remember you're joining a tradition that goes back to Moses on the far shore of the Red Sea. Different enemies, same song of praise. So as the smoke rises from the heavenly temple and seven angels prepare to pour out the final plagues, we end this episode on the brink of Revelation's grand finale. What a journey in chapters 11 through 15. We have witnessed faithful prophets doing God's work under his protection, a dragon defeated and fearsome beasts having their day, and the lamb standing victorious with his people. It's been nothing short of the apocalyptic roller coaster. And guess what? The ride is not over yet. In our next episode, in my next episode, the intensity ramps up even more. Yes, it is possible. Uh, it's gonna get crazier. So those seven golden bowls of wrath will be tipped, and let's just say it's bad news for the beast kingdom. We're talking about plagues that make the 10 plagues of Egypt look like a minor inconvenience. Plus, we'll see the epic takedown of Babylon the Great and the mother of all showdowns at the place called Armageddon. But don't worry, I will be here to narrate it with the usual mix of awe and a wink, helping us to find meaning amid the chaos. Alright, until next time, thank you for listening to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, subscribe, or leave a comment, have a conversation, what have you. You can catch new episodes only on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. I'm trying to get my Spotify working again. So hopefully I can upload all the episodes there and any, future episodes. Until next time, keep laughing and as always, stay curious. But as long as roosters are kept away